Hello and welcome to Coffee with Jenny B. It's about conversations over coffee, about community, and about connections. It's about what brings me joy and everything in between. I'm your host, Jenny Sacco-Bak. My 6-year-old granddaughter is an excellent negotiator. She knows exactly what she wants and knows exactly how to ask for it. Now, if we offer any counter argument or perhaps a no, she will come up with an argument and an explanation as to why she should get what she gets. I constantly marvel at how creative and smart she is at the age of 6. I remember when I was 6, I liked playing with dolls. I didn't know how to negotiate. I didn't think I needed to negotiate. I just took whatever I was given, but that was then. Now, little girls are really tuning in to what they want and what they deserve to get. But what's interesting is when little girls grow up to be big girls and women, we somehow lose that ability to really negotiate what we want and what we're worth, actually. There's a big difference between the two. My guest today is someone who knows a lot about negotiation. I refer to her affectionately as the fearless negotiator. She's also a strategist and a lover of life. Please help me welcome Joanne Zuk. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Jenny. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to really, dive into and talking about negotiation and strategy and really about all the work that you've been doing in the community. So why is it that little girls lose that ability to negotiate for themselves?
So I'll actually challenge you and say that you probably did ask for whatever you wanted, but there was a point at which that got shut down and you learned that that wasn't appropriate. So for most little girls, it's by the age of 9. So we think about grade 5. By grade 5, something happens. And in the research, we see that little boys and little girls, or kids raised as boys and girls, they both ask for the same audacious things. Grandma, can we go to Disney today? Like, they have no qualms about asking for what they want. But as they get older, as they come into school, as they start to develop an understanding of what it means to be, and I mean, you would probably remember little girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. Yeah. The way that we're socialized in society is that girls need to be grateful and humble and gracious and generous and really worry about other people and put up other people's needs before their own. And those are lovely attributes. But when we start to see those young girls grow into young women and into adults, what happens is that they learn that it's not right to ask for themselves. And we actually carry this discomfort when it comes to asking for what we want. When I talk to women my age, I'm in my mid-40s, they have no problem saying, well, this is what I need. Right? I need some help with grocery shopping, or I need this. But what do you want is a really hard conversation because we've been socially conditioned out of it. And then we've also, reinforced that in the structures that we've created in our own families.
And you bring a really good point to the fact that there's a big difference between want and need. Need is something that I need to do this now, that it's almost like an urge of I have to do something, versus I want. I want to get some help around the house. I want and deserve a new car, right? But when we talk about what we need, okay, I need you to help me, versus I want you to help me. Yeah. Big difference, because the want is some authority in a sense of what I'm asking you
Absolutely.
To do. Yeah,
it's owning your own space. Where by the time we're asking for something I need, usually we're in a state of exhaustion. Well, as mothers and parents and grandparents, we're often in the state of being exhausted by that time, completely at our wit's end. And if we're talking about in our families, what I need is really what I need to survive, and not not flip out on my family, right? In the workplace, though, it's kind of the same thing. So, you and I met a few years ago. I was doing a lot of work in the space of negotiation, both for women in business and women negotiating their salaries. Mm-hmm. But the same is true. I talk to women. I don't work very heavily in that space anymore, but I still talk to a lot of women, and they say, well, all I need is a little more than what I'm earning now, because the mortgage has gone up, the cost of groceries have gone up. But when we look at, well, what do you want? What's commensurate with or what's aligned with the work that you've been doing all these years? What is reasonable to say, I want this, and that's a reasonable level. Mm-hmm. It would be a generous level, but it's still a reasonable thing to ask for. That makes them really uncomfortable, right? It's easy to say, I'll take that incremental, that $1,000 a year extra, but to ask for $20,000 a year, even if there's so many reasons for them to say that that's what they deserve, it's very, very difficult. We have to overcome this internal conflict around what that means to ask for what we want. It's very hard.
It is very hard. And I wonder how much of it is the idea of being a people pleaser.
Yeah, people pleasing is the center of a lot of it, but it's I would break down people pleasing into a few different categories. So I would think about humility, right? Mm. We don't want to be seen as arrogant. We're taught very young on the playground that if you don't want to be that girl, right? You don't want to be all that, because people will shun you, and it's a defense mechanism to not act in an arrogant way, as certainly as a young girl. Whereas if you think about the young men you went to high school with, acting arrogant, they were the ones that were on the sports teams. They got the scholarships. Yeah. That behavior was very reinforced. Not so with girls. No. So I think humility is one of them. Generosity. We're always serve others first. I don't know if you did this, but when my parents had friends over as a kid, we would serve drinks to everyone. Mm-hmm. Be generous. Don't take the last cookie. All of these narratives that are reinforced in our families, just play in the back of our minds. So generosity, gratitude. Mm-hmm. Especially in I'd say salary negotiation. Gosh, if you're in a terrible workplace and you get the offer to move to another job, often you're so grateful to get out of that terrible experience and that awful boss that you don't even think about asking for what you deserve, right? Yeah. So there's a few parts of it. It's not just people pleasing. I think it's more complex than that, because there are all these different experiences. And I should say, it's not just women. A lot of folks who new Canadians for sure, but folks who grew up just having to make themselves small so that others could take up space, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
It does.
They echo the same experiences that they feel even into adulthood, that they can't take up space and ask for what they want and deserve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And you're right. When I think about when you're dating a boy, or you're going on a boy, or you're going together, it's like, even if you're smarter, which 9 times out of 10 you are smarter than the boy, you're not supposed to be smarter. You're supposed to almost play dumb in a way, so that it lets the boy shine. Right? And what you're doing is you're suppressing part of yourself, and even for me at the age of 64, my husband knows I'm smarter than he is. And, but sometimes he'll say, oh, come on. He says, why can't I be the smart one?
Right.
It's like, yeah, no, it's me.
Absolutely. I hope that's changing for young girls, but absolutely, just making ourselves smaller to give other people space is absolutely something that we experience throughout our lives. So it's a challenge, and I, as a mom, a stepmother of 2 daughters in their 20s, I've seen them shift and change over the years. And every time my older daughter, she's negotiated a couple of times, negotiated for something, I'm the biggest cheerleader, but I know it's even hard for her, having been around the conversations that we've had in the house for all of these years. So,
it's interesting because my granddaughter's birthday is coming up this month, and the other day she was over and she said, Grandma, I want you to take me to Toys R Us, and I get to pick out my birthday present.
Wow.
And I said, oh, Okay, well, what if Grandma got you a birthday present already? Well, I can get another one. And then she said, but if I can't have a big one, I want 2 small ones. So she's already decided, you know, I mean, I'm sure, obviously Grandma will get her the big one, whatever she wants, it doesn't matter. But the fact that she's already decided exactly what she wants, and she was very firm. It wasn't like, can I? It's like, I want you to take me. And there's that word want, and she already knows that if she wants something, she needs to speak up about it.
Yes. And that's great. And I think that as grandma, you have the ability to encourage that unabashedly, like just support that, but also teach her that sometimes there are boundaries, right? Sometimes there are things that are outside of the realm of reasonability. And so what's the sandbox in which we can say yes? I think it's really hard for parents, especially parents, and kids don't understand the concept of currency and, you know, how much things cost, and so it's a struggle. And I think this is also where this gets suppressed is, you know, your granddaughter's mom and dad might not have the ability to say, oh yeah, we'll go to Toys R Us and buy whatever you'd like. Yeah. They might not be in that position, and a lot of parents aren't. No. And what can happen is we just shut them down and say no, versus no because of these constraints, and teach them to negotiate within the constraints that exist, right?
I like that. Right. And it's also to say, well, it's not just a flat out no, but it's no, not yet. And not yet can be an explanation, and to be honest with them and talk about different circumstances, you know, and maybe instead of a present, how about an experience? And so while she's negotiating with me, I'm negotiating with her. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, if we can't have that, what about this? Yeah. You know, and then she can let me know either way if it works for her or if it works for me. But what we're having is an honest conversation, and we're talking about being not quite equals, but equal in the sense that we're both sharing what we want the other one to have, in a sense that we want it to be a good experience, not necessarily, well, no, you can't have that, but it's, and this is why.
Yeah, what does positive look like? I think that's a really important conversation. Whether it's a salary negotiation or business negotiation or negotiation with your granddaughter. Yeah. You know, what would a great outcome look like? Because I think we overthink the term negotiation as this negative experience, and it's seen in society as a kind of like playing hardball, and that's really not what the intent is. Negotiation is just 2 people deciding that they want to, you know, have some kind of mutual benefit, and having a conversation to trade off what they can and cannot commit to. So, and one thing that I enjoy, when my kids were younger, we traveled quite a bit. We are a family that loves to travel, and I remember taking them to the west coast of the U.S., and they each wanted to go to one theme park. And so we took the opportunity to give them a budget for the day and say, like, we can go to these theme parks, but you have to make some choices around how to use the budget that we have for that day, and how do we, you know, stay in a nice hotel and eat the meals that you want and go and see Mickey Mouse and do all of the fun things, because life honestly is a negotiation. It's a constant trade-off. And I think it's an important skill, even at your granddaughter's age, to learn, like, how do we be creative within the constraints and opportunities that are presented to us. Because I like the question, what does a yes look like? And yes can look very different.
And I think for young girls, it's looking at their parents, and particularly the mother and the grandmother, aunts, you know, the women that have a strong presence, but then it's also the dads, you know. Yeah. So are the dads supporting the mother? Are they dads, or are they equal partners in the sense of providing for their children? Sure. And so little girls can see, okay, so how is mom negotiating? What is mom getting, you know, for what she needs, and how is she doing that? Because my daughter, again, excellent negotiator. In fact, when she was growing up, my husband would always say, well, you should be a lawyer, because she could argue her. You couldn't win with her. She was like the best. And I remember, you know, I won't say what it was, but she wanted to do this thing, and I said no. She was too young. She had to wait, and she wrote me a 2-page letter, outlining absolutely everything,
Right.
why she should do the thing. And of course I said, okay, you gave me your argument, let's go and do it. Yeah.
That's
and
great.
I was so impressed by that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good for her.
Yeah.
But it's really a process. Like it's not complicated, but it's not something that we think about every day. So can I just offer a couple of tips on how to?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like
Please.
how to negotiate. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to negotiate, or you want a different outcome, it's important to really put yourself in the shoes of the other person and understand what their perspective might be. So project a little bit about what might be some of the things that they would say yes to that would be an easy yes. What are some of the things that they might struggle with? It's really important to get yourself out of your squirrel mind, like thinking about all of the things that you should be saying, and maybe do a little meditation. I have a YouTube channel, and so there's some meditations on there that you can use before negotiation, where you think about, what do I want here, and how do I communicate that in terms of tangible, if it's a job, tangible benefits or things that I might ask for. So really taking the time to think about what's the end goal? What would I love this to look and feel like? What would I love if it's a job? What would I love my life and my work to be like? And then what can I ask for in that negotiation? Doing some of that prep work is really important. If you don't have a plan going into the conversation, you're going to devolve into those blind spots of humility and generosity and gratitude. Like, it's really hard if you haven't done the pre-work to be able to stand up for yourself in the room. Also know that it might be a few conversations. Like I've been chatting with a friend of mine who's negotiating a job, and I think she's into her 4th conversation.
Oh my God, really?
And
wow.
It's great. Like, I keep telling her, that's amazing. They want to work with you, obviously. Like, you're just teasing out the fine details now. They want to make sure that you're happy with what you're agreeing to, especially now. We're in a time when employers complain of so much turnover in staff, that if they can make you happy, like if they can tweak a few little things, they're probably not going to find a whole bunch more budget to be able to afford you. But if they can make you happy with some small concessions, and you're able to say, yeah, you know what, I'll stay here for a couple of years for sure. Like, I'll commit to that. That can go a long way. Know that conversation might not just be like one conversation. Most negotiations are, okay, you talk to your granddaughter and she says she wants this, and I'm going to have to think about that. And you bring that back and say, well, we can't do all of this, but here's some things that we could think about. Why don't you take that back and think about it? Those are good negotiations where it's thoughtful. And then finally, follow up. So often we go through this anxiety experience of the lead up to a hard conversation. We have the hard conversation, we walk out feeling great, but then the offer that comes, the job offer that comes through, or the contract to offer, if it's a business thing that comes through, doesn't actually match what you said and what you agreed to in the conversation. You need to make sure you're following up and you're getting the things. If you had the hard conversation, you need to do the work and make sure that that's written down and that you're going to get that. You can't make assumptions.
No.
Just because they said something will be the case. Just because grandma said that you would get the biggest toy in the store.
Oh my gosh.
She should be getting that in writing.
She has a really good memory, because she'll say, Grandma, you said, and it's like, oh yeah, I did. Whoops.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
No, you mentioned YouTube, and I want to talk about all the courses that you have put on YouTube and that are free for anyone to download and to talk about. So tell us what some of these courses are, and I'm assuming it's about negotiation.
Yeah, so you called me the Fearless Negotiator.
Yes.
I have this concept called the Fearless Negotiation Project. I believe that we should have been taught how to do this when we were in grade 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I think that it's a failure of our society of not teaching everybody how to have strategic conversations about what we want and stand up for what we're looking for. So I created a few different courses. They exist for free on YouTube. It's just at Joanne Zuk. I'm sure you'll have a link in all the places.
Yep.
And so I have 3 of them. So I have one called The Art of Negotiation, and it's a long form course that really takes you through like an in-depth dive into those psychological setups and helps you kind of work through them to overcome them for general purposes. For, you can use that for salary, you can use that in business, you can use that in any sort of circumstance at home or at work or in your community. And then I have two really specific ones. So I have a 90-minute salary negotiation workshop that's very to the point. You've got a job offer. What do you do now? And how do you what are all of the steps you need to take to make sure you're in a position to negotiate effectively? So that's a great one. And then I have I think it's about a 3-hour course for entrepreneurs. So it goes through how to apply these same concepts when you own a small business and, you're making all the decisions on behalf of your business. And it's, again, those same issues come up because, you want to build your name and get your name out there. And so you offer your services for free, or, we tend to make choices that aren't really going to help us in the long run sometimes. Yeah. So they're totally free. They're available there. In the meantime, I am working on a couple of books, again, one for salary, one for for business, because I think some people like me won't sit down and watch a video, but I will absolutely read a book. So working on those as well.
That's great. I love that, and I can't wait for the books to be published so I can dive in and read all about that. Now, you had mentioned strategist. I introduced you as a strategist, and you mentioned strategy when it comes to negotiation. So talk about your role as a strategist and the work that you've done in the community and in Winnipeg.
Yeah, so I find negotiation kind of leads naturally into strategy because as part of developing your strategy, there's a lot of self-negotiation you have to do. First, if you think about small business, and you and I did a strategy session together
we did.
Last year as a small business owner. And I like to say strategy is not a wish list, right? No. A strategy is actually a plan to achieve the actual tangible goals that we have. I might have a goal of being a billionaire, but realistically, do I have the connections, the skills, maybe I'll win a lottery ticket, but to plan for that means taking a very unique approach to be able, if that was my plan, well, I probably should have started a few years ago and not right now. But so my primary work is in the space of strategy. I spent 20 years in public service where my job was always working on high-level strategic plans and strategic alignment work. So mostly I work with bigger organizations in the community. I've had the privilege to work with the YMCA of Winnipeg and Camp Stevens, their summer camp program. But I also do work with smaller local not-for-profit organizations, and I've had such a blast working with these community-based organizations that do such important work. So like Manitoba Possible, they work with the community of persons with disabilities.
Yes.
I recently did some work with SCE LifeWorks. They help folks with intellectual disabilities find employment and have the supports necessary to just build really, meaningful and powerful lives for themselves. The community care providers, I'm working with that network right now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so it's a skill, or the skill that I have of helping people sort of see the forest for the trees and going out to the long-term vision and then building a plan backwards of the most important things that we need to do and the hard decisions that we need to make. And I know you and I had this conversation about, if this is your goal, there's only so many hours in a day. There are only so many days in a week and in a year. And if your goal is to be here in 3 years, well, you're going to have to make some hard decisions about what you're not doing, right? We all have a million ideas. Your staff, if you're in a community-based organization, there are a million ideas that people have, but they're not all going to get you to where you want to be going. And so it's a hard job, and I think I do well the role of playing the bad cop a little bit, like in terms of, well, it's this or this, right? You can't do it all. There are only so many quarters in a year. There's only so much time. And so what's going to be the most important for you to move forward? But also what fills you up? Like I think, whether it's personal strategy or business strategy, what are the things that just feel really good to do, How do we support employees in a really positive way and build a great culture? Sometimes those aren't, the essential, the most important thing to do to fulfill the financial mandate of the organization, but they're really important in terms of being able to move that organization forward over long term. So, yeah.
It's deciding, I guess, what is most important in that instance. And I think about one of my favorite books is Start With Why. You know, so Simon Sinek, and really it drills down to, you know, and when you think again back to the 6-year-old, well, why? Well, why? Yeah. Well, why? Well, why? Until finally it's like, okay, I'm satisfied with the answer because I finally got. And sometimes we don't even know what our why is until somebody's challenging us. So you challenging me, but why do you want to do that? But why? But why? But why? And then finally, like we all have that answer inside of us. And either we know it, but we can't say it, or maybe we don't recognize what that is. We think it's something else. And then finally we're forced to almost face that why, and it's like, okay, now what? What do I do with this?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of, if you know, we're talking about small business owners, I think here is we struggle a little bit with all of the things in front of us, all the many things that we can do, because there's both like the small business owner inside of us, and there's the person, there's the family member, there's the community member, there's the person who has to take care of myself. So I can't extricate my business Joanne, from Joanne who loves to go cycling with her husband on the West Coast, or Joanne who loves to volunteer. I'm the board chair for Shakespeare in the Ruins, who loves to be a part of community theater, even though I don't have a creative bone in my body.
I challenge you on that.
I'm creative in a different way. I'm a creative in an intellectual way.
Okay.
But you know, I think especially if you're a small business owner or you're a leader in an organization, you have to reconcile all these parts of you, right? And strategy can help you do that. It can help you really make good decisions that help you balance your life. Like I figured out in my first year of business that if I wasn't going to the gym, getting on my bike 3 times a week, sleeping 8 hours a day, I was not going to be able to deliver for my clients. My work is primarily intellectual. I have to come to them ready to connect all the dots. And like you said, sometimes you need somebody to see it in you, or they need to poke you a little bit. I have to be on for that. And I realized that if I wasn't at my best, I couldn't charge the rates that I charged. I couldn't deliver as much work as I wanted to. So part of my strategy is actually making sure I get to the gym 3 times a week. I go for 4 bike rides a week. I spend time with my husband. We build in vacation time into our life. It's actually part of my business strategy.
Yeah.
Because it helps me be better and achieve the goals that I have for my business.
I love that, and I totally agree, because I'm the same way. You know, I need to look after, and you mentioned it earlier, fill your cup. Yeah. What fills your cup? What fills you with joy? And if you can't find the joy, and if it's just a daily grind and pushing yourself, then it's not worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to leave with one final thing. Now, I introduced you as well as a lover of life, and you've talked about biking. Tell us about your latest passion.
Well, I don't know if it's a passion yet. I'm going to try it.
Okay.
I went to a community event yesterday with the mayor of Winnipeg, Patty Weens, and Winnipeg Trails. There's a center at the Forks. If you haven't been there, you can actually check your bike in at the Forks, where the old Brannigan's was, if you remember that.
Yes, I do.
I know I'm dating myself now.
Yeah, me too.
But you can, if you come to the Forks during the day, you can check your bike in there, and then you don't have to worry about locking it up, which is really nice. But they put on a workshop about winter cycling. So I put on I think I put on about 2,000 kilometers a year on my bike. My husband and I have a cottage, and we go biking. We love to take our bikes whenever we go see our daughter in Calgary, and anytime we can travel, we take our bicycles with us. But one thing I have not done is winter biking, and that is the new challenge. So I've got studded tires, I've got all the layers, and you'll have to check back with me in hopefully a month. I hope the snow doesn't fly soon, but yeah, so it's a challenge for me to bring that into my life for the full year, not just the summer.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking about negotiation, about strategy, we covered a lot actually, and I know that people watching this later will appreciate all the tips, and also the idea that you have your negotiation courses on YouTube, and so it's available for anyone who wants to learn how to negotiate for themselves. So thank you again for being here, Joanne.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is Coffee with Jenny B, Conversations over Coffee with the Multicultural channel. I'm your host, Jenny Sacco-Bak.